This is TWiT.
We are back from the break, and that means it's time to talk about hearables before we come back to wearables. Tell us about Samsung's latest offering in terms of its in-ear devices, particularly the, I would argue, shift in design from what we've seen in the past.
Big time. Yeah. Samsung, and I'm actually a really huge fan of Samsung's earables, as I think you just put it. I like that. In the past, you know, they had more of kind of the bean kind of form factor approach, not with the stem that's hanging down. So here this year with their earables, the big thing is, yeah, they look a heck of a lot like AirPods. You know, they were stemless before. Now they've got that stem. And they say, you know, arguably this adds more surface area for touch controls. Personally, I get it, but then at the same time, like I got used to it on the kind of bean style approach that they've been doing for so many years. But anyways, they've got two different earables. That's so a word that I'm going to continue using. Galaxy Buds 3, which are kind of the lower end, $179 open type earbuds. So there is no true seal here, you know, because everybody's different as far as what they want to put in their ear holes. Some people don't like the one that goes deep into the canal with a silicone tip, which Samsung does have. We'll talk about in a second. This is the one that kind of rests on there. So you get some noise cancellation, though, you know, how much can you do with an open canal design? Some not, you know, total. There is no transparency mode here because it's not really needed because of the open design. And then you've got the Galaxy Buds 3 Pro, which are, you know, the more premium, $249, metallic looking, which I'm not a big fan of. Has on the ear tip, which they actually call the blade, because it's kind of like an angular ear tip instead of a circular one or a cylindrical one like you see on the AirPods. The blade, but it works as the blade because there's also LEDs running down each. So it just reminds me of when AirPods were first announced how many years ago, and we all saw them dangling down, and it was the easy target to like make fun of, like, oh my goodness, that looks awful, and now we're accentuating it.
Is there function to that, or is it just look?
Oh, that's a good question. I wonder if it shows, like, that would be, some sort of like pairing.
I guess it'll only be showing unless you're looking in the mirror. Because I was thinking, if it went from like light blue to dark blue, it was telling you that it's, you know, more, or the volume's higher or lower, or brightness to dimness. But when I think about it, you'd have to be looking in a mirror to see that. And so then I'm just thinking about how much of my battery is being devoted to these lights?
Totally.
That would mean that I have more battery.
Completely agree. Huh. That's a really great question. I didn't actually look that up to see, like, is it some sort of indicator? Is it a volume indicator? Is it a battery indicator? You know, all these things that I guess it could be. But again, you have to ask yourself, like, but why? Like, it's in my ear. Do I really need that light to be shining? Unless it's just meant to look blingy, which that could be it too, you know, and at what cost? But I mean, silicone ear tips. So you get that seal. It's that in canal, you know, in your ear canal type that gets you the seal that brings you true adaptive noise cancellation. And in fact, it's adaptive because the surroundings can actually influence the sound and the cancellation. They're using adaptive EQ, adaptive noise cancellation to basically take in, like, what is the environment, apply more, apply less, make it sound different. It also has a transparency mode. And yeah, that's $249. So, you know, definitely more expensive, and definitely looks, you know, they've just taken a completely different design approach, and really kind of, I mean, it's hard to say that they're copying directly Apple, because Apple is not the only earbud manufacturer that does the stem thing. There are lots of them out there. I mean, I have, you know, some OnePlus buds right here. They're stems as well. It's one of the design approaches, but it is interesting. Yeah, it is interesting that Samsung's doing that after so long not doing it. I wonder what the real reason is. Is it that surface area for touch interaction, or is it something different?
Yeah, because I always thought that any ability to get the microphone closer to the mouth would be a good idea. So
yeah, you think so? That's true.
You know, the beans that are, it's just a little bit farther away, that maybe you wouldn't have as good beam forming. But in any case, I didn't have a problem with it being close to the design, other than the charging case that felt a lot like the same design, because the case is almost identical and has the LED light right there in the middle where it charges. But again, I just don't really care if it's, so what if it's the same thing. It's just but from a different company. I don't know. Unless they're trying to sell it as if it's an Apple product, then it's not breaking any rules. It's just, I guess, about taste at that point. I don't know.
I don't know. Like, I find myself in a really interesting position when it comes to earbuds and, true wireless earbuds and everything like that. Like, at this point, I've used so many of them, and like, I have a couple of different pairs that I can review. Like, I've used them enough to do a review on them, but I feel like they're so commoditized at this point. They all really do close to the same thing. How much can you really say about it other than that's just the Samsung branded one and sounds a little better, or whatever the case? I will give Samsung that. I've always felt that maybe not always, but definitely in the last handful of years, when I've had the opportunity to test out their true wireless earbuds, I feel like they are right near the top of the best sounding ones that I've used. So I will totally give them that.
And then last but not least, something that I know people were excited about, and I'm curious to hear if after it was announced, people still seem to be excited about it, how you feel about it, and of course, cost and all of that. The Galaxy Ring. It is cool to see a wearable of this sort from a big tech company, as opposed to kind of smaller tech companies that are trying to do the same sort of thing. Tell us about the Galaxy Ring.
Yeah, I mean, we've known about the Ring for, months now, and we've kind of been waiting, like, when is Samsung going to finally release the Ring? So they are. And by the way, I should also mention, every single piece of hardware that was announced yesterday is shipping on July 24th, including the Ring. So I think that's pretty cool. There's none of that, like, here's the thing, and you're going to have to wait months for it. It's all, not quite immediate gratification, but close enough. Anyways, the Galaxy Ring 24/7 tracker, meant to be worn all the time. It can last 7 days, according to what Samsung is saying as far as the battery is concerned, which, I mean, I think that's pretty fair. It has a little, a charging case that it rests in that looks like you could propose to someone with it. Is it like a futuristic proposal? But I don't know. I feel like 7 days is enough. I wonder how fast it charges up. But 3 finishes: matte black, silver, gold. It has 3 different sensors underneath: heart rate, infrared, skin temperature for things like sleep monitoring, which is very interesting. And then there's an accelerometer in there for steps and runs. As you said, the Galaxy Ring is not the only thing that does this. The Aura Ring is a little less expensive than what Samsung has here. $399 for the Samsung Galaxy Ring. And I think the most expensive Aura Ring is $350 is my understanding, but that requires a subscription to do the stuff that this allows you to do as far as tracking and data and all that kind of stuff, data analysis, that sort of stuff, comes out of the box. However, the flip side to this is the Galaxy Ring only works with a Galaxy phone paired with a Samsung Health app. So it's really locking itself into the Samsung ecosystem, which I guess isn't that odd. Samsung really likes to think of itself as another Apple as far as its ecosystem is concerned, and they've done a pretty good job of cultivating that. I'm curious about this purely from the perspective of sleep tracking, probably more than anything. Do I need to count my steps and all that stuff? No, I've got my phone in my pocket usually, or I've got my watch on my wrist that does that. I don't really pay close attention to it anyways. But sleep tracking is something that I'm more and more paying attention to as I get older, and I have zero interest to wear, a gigantic honking watch to bed, but I will absolutely wear a ring, and I want to know how accurate it is. And, they say that it's, going to be able to kind of track aspects of sleep apnea and that sort of stuff. That could be really helpful, really handy. But $399 is an expensive ring to put on your finger. So we'll see if it's worth it.
Yeah, that isn't cheap. That's for sure.
No.
And I was kind of curious in terms of it being that option for people on the Android platform. So to know that it only works with Samsung, a little bit of a bummer in that sense. But yeah, I want to see this be successful because I want to see other companies do this. I'd like, Google to make the Pixel ring, and for Apple to make some sort of ring, and OnePlus to do a ring. And then with it, kind of involve it in other aspects of the technology. We've seen the Apple Watch, for example, having gestural controls that are built in that have to do with it looking at the tendons essentially in your wrist and knowing what you're doing with your fingers because of what you're doing with your the way that the tendons are moving. And so the idea that, a ring could be part of a gestural interface when these companies are working on AR and VR products would be pretty cool. So yeah, I still look forward to seeing how this technology evolves overall. And if, there's going to be a Galaxy Ring 2 and 3, like there has been with the other products. And so I think
it's really interesting what you just mentioned there. Sorry to interrupt, but before we lose the thread of it, what you mentioned there as far as things like controlling in an AR and VR perspective, because another thing they announced yesterday, or they didn't really announce, they just mentioned it again, and it's not the first time we've heard this, but we keep hearing it, is the upcoming reveal of some sort of XR platform by Google and Samsung. We've heard Google talk about this very briefly in the past, kind of lay the little secret, pathway down in front of us so that we all start to get curious, but then not tell us very much about it. And Samsung did, or I can't remember if it was Rick Osterloh or if it was Samsung itself, did mention the XR platform yesterday as well, saying that it would be unveiled sometime this year. So I don't know. I mean, we could see, maybe not necessarily with the Galaxy Ring right now. I don't know that it necessarily, at least at this point, we don't know enough about it to know whether it has the ability to do some of those kind of control mechanism sort of things with a potentially, a new kind of XR platform coming out. But I could totally see it in the future. And that's a really interesting direction to explore. And we've got the clues to know that something's coming. So, nice. Might not have to wait too long to see.
We shall see. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time today to walk us through what Samsung announced at its Galaxy Unpacked event. If folks want to stay up with what you're doing and perhaps see reviews of some of these hardware devices later on down the line, where should they go for all you've got?
Well, two main things for reviews of these types. YouTube.com/@techsploder, TECHSPLODER, is my YouTube channel. So I'm doing a lot of, tech reviews and AI walkthroughs and everything. There's also a bunch of my podcasts that are hosted on there. But also Android Faithful, AndroidFaithful.com, which is essentially all about Android, the next generation, with the same crew. We're doing it over there. And we will absolutely be talking about this event on the upcoming episode this next Tuesday.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason, for your time, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Great to see you, Micah. Bye, TWiT, folks.
Thanks so much for watching this little chunk of Tech News Weekly. If you'd like to get the full episode, well, head over to twit.tv/TNW. There you'll find buttons you can click or tap to subscribe to the entire show in audio and video formats. Or just look in the description. We've got links down there as well.